Welcome back, trainers. I'm Tyson, joined here with Choppa for the Collectors Emporium Mega Cup. We're here with round 5, our final round of Swiss here today. Before we jump into our top cut, it's super excited to get into this last round of Swiss. Again, last round of Swiss. It's already so, like, the day has been so long, but so short at the same time. But just so we can remember what our players are fighting for, let's do a prizing breakdown here of our first place through 8th place, which first place, again, is going to get a whopping $500, as well as 50% store credit, a booster box, and 50 championship points to take home with them today. A lot of rewards for a lot of effort put into today's games.
Yeah, and just to remind you kind of about the stakes of this round, a player is going to need a 3-2 or better record to have a chance of moving on to Top Cut. At 3-2, it's going to be decided based on resistance, how many games your opponents have won. If you have a 4-1 record or better, you are safe. If you have 3-2, you might be on the bubble, something that will come into play for this round. We should take a look at some of the top non-restricted Pokemon from today, though. Really, a lot of like the faces that I think we're pretty used to seeing at this point in the format, whether that's like popular speed control Pokemon like Fluttermane with Icy Wind or Tornadus with Tailwind. And then as well, a lot of redirectors like Indeedee and 2 Ogerpon forms. Really, if there's anything that stands out to me here, it is that Iron Crown. Really, like, 1 in every 6 teams having it. I'd assume a lot of them kind of inspired by the Koraidon teams that did really well at regionals recently. I'm kind of just like blown away by how much Iron Crown we're seeing. I don't think we've had a chance to highlight it on stream yet today, have we?
No, we haven't, but I like the little lead in there considering it is going to be on our next stream game. Iron Crown is going to be featured here for this round 5, so if you want to see some Iron Crown action since Atlanta, you get to see it now. You get to see a direct copy of the team, I believe, including that Brute Bonnet as well, that we talked about in the very beginning of the show, the pre-show, the Atlanta winning and finalist team, which is very crazy to say. It's a very, very strong team for sure. And then not only that, the opposing team there from Krystyna is using Arceluna, the Tornadus, Amoonguss, and Kyogre as well.
Yeah, Krystyna's team here looks really interesting. Kind of like you mentioned, that Choice Scarf Ogre and Focus Sash Urshifu pair seems like one of the main like offensive pieces of it. One other thing that could be working in her favor here is Rain Dance on the Tornadus. I think something that Koraidon usually does not like to see is like a form of manual weather control like that. Because if you've got Koraidon versus Tornadus on the field, everything seems like you can work with that. But if the Tornadus sets up like Rain Dance on you, your Koraidon is just like really like a fish out of water at that point.
I think if you were looking to have a matchup against a team like this Koraidon, the Kyogre team is definitely one of the ones that I would prefer. Not only are you setting up the rain, but you have something like the Choice Scarf as well to make sure you have a speed advantage on something like the Fluttermane, for example, which instead of running booster energy for when you're outside of sun is opting instead for the Focus Sash. So you actually get a speed advantage there. You will be slower than something like the Chi-Yu, which has its own Choice Scarf. But besides that, I think Kyogre has a really good matchup here, and considering you could maybe switch in the Koraidon if you are Seung switching it in to set up the Sun up against opposing Kyogre. Again, like you mentioned, the Rain Dance on the Tornadus is there to make sure that rain is going to be the weather that we see this game most likely.
I ultimately I think that I could really see this going either way, and that's kind of like one of the fun things about Koraidon and why it's a better Sunsetter than Groudon on most teams right now is it can still play even if it doesn't have the weather in its favor. Something like Groudon is just like the fact that you have to deal with this water weakness is such a huge issue for it. No Groudons here. We just have our 2 Paradox friends, Brute Bonnet and Iron Crown, facing off against Krystyna's Urshifu and Tornadus.
And I really like this lead from both players here, giving the opportunity to switch in your weather setter, knowing that it's kind of a one-and-done deal until you switch them back out again. So something like the Kyogre and the Koraidon on the back for both of these trainers respectively makes a lot of sense. I like Krystyna's choice here to lead the Torn Urshifu, something we haven't really got to see in a while, but a very powerful lead if used in the right hands. Something like a Rain Dance and a Surging Strike could do a lot of damage here if you aren't expecting Koraidon to come in. You could try to wait the turn and set up a Tailwind and go for a Detect to maybe burn a turn to see if the Koraidon, to bait in a potential Koraidon swap. The Brute Bonnet is a bit dangerous here, going for a Spore potentially into either of these slots or even super effective damage into the Urshifu.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to say what is going to happen here. Ooh, this is an interesting one. So we actually see Indeedee, I believe, coming in place of the Urshifu, which, like, on the surface might not be the Pokemon that you want to have against something like Iron Crown or Brute Bonnet here, especially on the off chance that Seung really might have just gone for something like an Expanding Force this turn. Looks like he is swapping in his own Indeedee. I don't think I have many illusions about what this Iron Crown is going for here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if Seung didn't switch in the Iron Crown themselves, or the Indeedee themselves, I mean, Krystyna did it for them. The Expanding Force, though, is not going to be able to knock out the Tornadus, and this Bleak Wind Storm there, trying to fish for a speed drop potentially, or trying to go for super effective damage into what was that Brute Bonnet slot. The Indeedee taking it really well as the Iron Crown, considering it's a resisted move.
Yeah, if anything, I'm surprised that I wasn't sure if Tornadus was going to make it out of that turn, so. Then again, maybe not the most impactful Bleak Wind to go for, but Tornadus, maybe seeing that it's about to go down, can choose to go for something like a Tailwind or probably a Tailwind here. I don't know if there's anything better than that to do about like what looks like another pretty safe Expanding Force. Maybe popping the Terra Dark in the hopes that it can hang on for another turn, though.
Yeah, I don't mind this, considering you haven't seen the sun yet. You can assume it's Seung's last Pokemon here. You know that Rain is going to be more impactful than something like a Terra Water on a Pokemon. Like, being able to keep your Tornadus around to set up the Rain is going to be more important than your Urshifu getting a little bit of an extra boost. The Rain is going to be that boost for you. So Terra Dark here makes a lot of sense, considering the Indeedee on the opposing side cannot even target your Tornadus. It has Psychic as its last damaging move. This Tornadus is going to be immune to everything except the Tachyon Cutter, and that's a very bold play you would have to make in your Seung.
Yeah, ooh, it's actually just going to be a calm mind instead, maybe saying like, I'm not totally sure what Tornadus wants to go for yet. Let me go for something that's going to give me reliable benefit. And especially with something like a Kyogre in the back, this calm mind really could come to help that Iron Crown for a lot of time. I don't really think it's such a big deal for Seung that he wasn't able to do anything about the Tornadus this turn. Like, are you that worried about a Bleak Wind coming out?
But not being able to do anything about the Tornadus was less... It's less about the Tornadus, I feel like, on that turn, more than the fact that Krystyna got a free swap into Urshifu without breaking the Focus Sash.
Free swap into Urshifu in front of, like, Crown and Indeedee.
Yeah.
So, like, wow, good on Krystyna for, like, seeing the opportunity to go for a swap like that and get that off without losing your Urshifu.
With the Focus Sash as well, kind of forces Seung to go for something like a Follow Me maybe here to redirect away of the Surging Strikes. We see the Rain Dance come out here from Krystyna. Tachyon Cutter into the Tornadus, though, getting rid of that weather. Again, is another sign that Karana is potentially in the back to kind of get the last say in what the weather's going to be this game. The Psychic is most likely coming out from Indeedee here if that was the play.
Ooh,
as
where's
Urshifu is going to go for a Surging Strikes into the Iron Crown.
I think getting rid of this Iron Crown with the Surging Strikes is pretty significant, but like you said, it leaves the Indeedee wide open to like set up a Trick Room, go for Psychic if it wants. I think either of those would be really significant.
Absolutely. Psychic there, just to break the Focus Sash there, I think makes a little bit more sense. You know the Urshifu isn't going to be able to do anything when the Kryton comes in, and assuming you have the Brute Bonnet as well, you're just in a really good spot here to bring in either of these Pokemon to just start doing damage. And Koraidon having the move like Collision Course and Flame Charge boosting up that speed, you can get a +1 speed, which is going to be very helpful against the Choice Scarf Kyogre in the back.
I think Seung's decision to go into Koraidon there is interesting because on Krystyna's side, she has what's very likely a Choice Scarf Kyogre in the back. You don't want to send that out at the same time as Koraidon because it's going to end up, your opponent's Pokemon is going to move second, be the one setting the weather. So you'll have a Kyogre kind of floating around awkwardly in the sun. By keeping Kyogre in the back, Krystyna's making sure that she's still going to have a chance to set up Rain at some point.
I think bringing Koraidon there is like decently fine. Yes, you lose the weather, but you are threatening so much damage. You kind of force Krystyna in a spot. Do I like bring in Indeedee, sacrifice the Indeedee so that Urshifu can get an attack? Or do I bring in Kyogre and like just take unnecessary damage on something? The close combat does fire off into the Koraidon, but does not do enough to knock it out. I actually am concerned that maybe the Indeedee here, yeah, it does get just to get the knockout. The Scarf Kyogre is going to be the last Pokemon, and if you are Seung, you could just protected. See what Krystyna locks into, and the game is kind of solved from there.
Yeah, especially with like the full health Brute Bonnet in the back, things definitely look up for Seung at this point. I mean, not only like even ignoring the fact that this Kyogre is at a 1-3 deficit in a weather matchup, usually forcing your opponent down to like one Pokemon, or at least depriving them of switches by getting them down to two Pokemon when you have more than that, or when you're the one with weather up, tends to give you a pretty big advantage. So on Seung's side, we could even see something like if Seung decides that he really wants to have the sun up, this could just be Koraidon for Brute Bonnet, and then Koraidon sitting in the back, waiting to come in again. If you're Kyogre here, I wonder if you still have any hope of winning this game if you lock into something like an Ice Beam instead, knowing that your opponent has something like a Dragon type and a Grass type that you still have to get through.
I mean, an Ice Beam would be nice. This is the turn to get it. Instead, Water Spout is going to be the move of choice here. Knocking out the Indeedee and doing about a third to the Brute Bonnet there. I mean, damage is damage, and I think figuring out what your Kyogre is able to do damage-wise is going to allow you to have a potentially better game plan for Game 2, although I don't think Krystyna's game plan was too bad this game. Maybe popping the Terra Dark was a bit better. The Koraidon here for Seung coming in, though, giving that Brute Bonnet its photosynthesis here, allowing its defense to be heightened. Not that it will matter against the Kyogre, but more importantly, the Sun having that water damage that the Kyogre is throwing out.
And that defense boost is something that is definitely good to know, because maybe Krystyna's thinking about, like, oh, I want to be using my Urshifu to deal with that Amoonguss. I have a feeling like Brute Bonnet with that defense boost active, Urshifu isn't going to be able to get through it in one hit. I think that's like really one of the things that makes Brute Bonnet such a unique Pokemon is it doesn't have the great defensive typing that Amoonguss does, but it gets to abuse photosynthesis. It has slightly higher stats overall. This Water Spout, even at full HP, just due to the Sun, Kyogre not putting up any impressive numbers here.
Absolutely, and Collision Course there. Also going to be a good gauge of damage, does so much to that Kyogre, and Seed Bomb there, super effective, able to finish off the Kyogre and give Game 1 over Seung. I'm really interested to see how Krystyna is going to change up their game plan into Game 2. I really do like the Terra Dark Tornadus. You just kind of have to avoid those Tachyon Cutters, unfortunately, though. But besides that, if you can position the Terra Dark Tornadus in front of the two Psychic types and also live the Tachyon Cutters, you're in a really good position. So if you realize, hey, this is the Terrestrialization I want to commit to this game, just use it off the rip, and then you're not taking the random Expanding Force that we saw in that turn 1.
Exactly. I think Krystyna understanding that maybe that's something that would be good to go for one turn earlier could make a really big difference here, just because, like, I think in that game, the hits that we saw Tornadus go down to were one Expanding Force and then one Tachyon Cutter. You can probably force Iron Crown to expend 2 different moves to get rid of your Tornadus. I really don't think Tachyon Cutter is getting rid of it in one, and I think that's super important when the rest of the team really does not love fighting the Iron Crown at all. Like, let's see, there's an Amoonguss on the team, but without, like, it has Terra Fire instead of something like Terra Dark, so it can't do so much about Expanding Force. Ursaluna, probably not a Pokemon that wants to fight that Iron Crown. I think Krystyna figuring out something a little bit better to do about this Iron Crown is really going to be the make or break here. That is sort of just like the sleeper pick that Seung is showing us that he's willing to go all in on. I think it's very likely that we're going to see like pretty similar brings from Seung here. And honestly, I think we might see similar brings from Krystyna here. The Pokemon that we saw her leave at home, Amoonguss and Ursaluna, this just doesn't really feel like the matchup for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you get that turn 1 correctly, for example, right? If you go for something like a Terrestrialization Dark on the Tornadus and you just go for a Rain Dance Surging Strikes into the Iron Crown and call out that Seung isn't bringing in the Koraidon. They bring in the Indeedee. There's no Sun. Your Urshifu is able to do so much damage. And even if Koraidon did come in, the switches come before the Prankster Rain Dance. So you'd be able to do so much damage. But I guess that's what this lead is covering here with the Brute Bonnet able to do super effective damage for the Urshifu as well. Krystyna is going to change up their lead, and Seung is not, as we see an Urshifu and an Amoonguss here, as you kind of alluded to before.
Yeah, the Amoonguss is something that I'm a little bit surprised to see. I definitely don't think it is something to be ruled out here just because connecting like a single Spore could be game-changing. It's just that that's going to be really tough to do in front of the Psychic type damage. I think the Amoonguss is like very likely to have to be the Pokemon that wants to Terra if it wants to do anything about that Expanding Force, or call out that your opponent is just going for something else, maybe expecting this Seung to go for something like a Calm Mind first, or perhaps even a Tachyon Cutter. Amoonguss looks like it might choose to play it a little bit safer with a Protect, though.
I think a Protect makes a little bit of sense here, not wanting to drop to the Expanding Force. As we see Seung target into that Amoonguss, seeing super effective damage into both, not wanting to risk it, trying to split damage there. Close combat being the move of choice into the Iron Crown. I like that a lot, just making sure the Cryogon or the Indeedee, or excuse me, just the Cryogon coming in, not trying to do anything. The Spore, though, also into the Amoonguss, so a really good Protect from Krystyna there.
Yeah, that was some really effective bait from her part, kind of saying like, hey, you want to use a psychic move on my Amoonguss so bad. Ooh, you want to follow it up with a grass type Spore in case I get rid of my grass typing. And again, Amoonguss has just been used as bait, successfully protecting against 2 single target moves like that always feels great. What is Amoonguss going to try to do now? Is this Spore with no Terra? Wow. You know, considering that Amoonguss might be able to live 1 hit of Expanding Force like without the Terra in play, I can see it. I think I like this decision to look at something like the Terra on the Amoonguss, though. I think, like, especially if you're not going to try and use your Tornadus as a Dark type in the back, I think this is a great time to use up your Terra.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, like, no big drawback turning your Amoonguss into a Fire type in this matchup, I don't think.
Exactly, because if you use Terrestrialization, now you're able to put the Iron Crown to sleep, which is, as we analyze, is the threat on this board, right? So there's no reason for the Terra Dark anymore. And Sucker Punch plus a Psychic was assumably going into Urshifu. It's not going to get it, though, as Krystyna gets another Protect correct. And this Terrifier Amoonguss didn't need to, almost didn't click it, and would have gotten away with it.
Yeah.
Clicks the Spore into the Iron Crown, and this is suddenly a pretty good spot for Krystyna.
Krystyna is reading out of her mind. That is like 2 really correct turns in a row of just calling out exactly what Pokemon Seung was trying to address and saying, nah, I'd Protect. I wonder what this means now, because the one downside of Amoonguss turning into a Fire type is it doesn't have a Spore to work with against, it doesn't have a Spore immunity to work with against the enemy Brute Bonnet. That's a really big deal, especially if this enemy Brute Bonnet may be able to live 1 close combat.
Yeah, and yeah, it is able to. So meaning with the defense boost, it's going to be able to eat maybe even 2 with the defense. It's kind of close. The Spore instead going to the Urshifu. Seung saying, okay, I got both of the first 2 turns and corrected the Protects. I'm going to get it right this 3rd turn. It does, as they put Krystyna's Urshifu to sleep.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty significant setback because that enemy Brute Bonnet is like, okay, so you read the Amoonguss protecting, you put the Urshifu to sleep, you know that you live the close combat. Now I think this is just going to be another Spore into the Amoonguss slot, and we're very likely going to see 2 of Krystyna's Pokemon fall asleep now. There's, you know, no Grass Terra, no Safety Goggles Pokemon. If Krystyna's sleep turns don't cooperate with her and Seung's does, you know, maybe the Iron Crown is going to be the Pokemon to wake up first here. Things could get very spooky for Krystyna very quickly.
Iron Crown stays asleep there for Seung's Iron Crown stays asleep on Seung's side. The Spore does come out from the Brute Bonnet into the Amoonguss, and now both these Pokemon, as you said, are asleep. Krystyna doesn't really have a good switch in there, unfortunately, though, with these Choice Scarf Kyogre in the back. Isn't really able to switch in, and the Tornadus also doesn't want to switch in, right? You don't have something like the Taunt, and nor do you actually get to be able to taunt the Brute Bonnet, because it's that Dark type, and it's immune to those Prankster moves. So there's no real counterplay that Krystyna could do immediately off the bat to stop a Spore, considering there's no Terrestrialization or Goggles, as you said.
Yeah, this Indeedee switch in kind of saying like, hey, if Iron Crown wakes up, my damage is going to be supercharged. I have that Expanding Force to hit both of you as soon as I wake up. I think that Iron Crown is on 2 turns of sleep right now, so we're looking at a 1 and 2. Ooh, it's actually Urshifu moving first and going for a Detect, so Urshifu just getting a 1 turn there. Let's see, Iron Crown waking up in 2 turns. Got to imagine this is the Expanding Force.
Absolutely, and I'm really curious how much this is going to do to Amoonguss here. Even with the Terrifier, I expect it to do so much damage.
Oh my goodness.
And Amoonguss is unfortunately in range of another Expanding Force here followed up. The thing is, though, the Urshifu here has its Focus Sash still intact. So the Indeedee has to make a decision. Do I let the Iron Crown go down, or do I follow me to redirect these Surging Strikes? Because if you do go for an Expanding Force and a Psychic, you could potentially get rid of both Pokemon here on Krystyna's side.
I feel like if I'm Seung, the Follow Me Expanding Force is just looking so juicy right now. It is going to spread damage around really, really effectively. Ooh, no Follow Me, though. It's just going to be the Expanding Force. So maybe this is a follow-up from Indeedee to sort of like say, okay, if you swap Amoonguss out, I'm just going to knock out the switch in with a Psychic, or if you leave Urshifu in, he's also going down to a Psychic. However, the cost of that is going to be this Iron Crown going down to 2 more, rather, Searching Strikes.
And the Iron Crown is down for Krystyna, and again, that's a big part of why the team was annoying for them. The Psychic is going to follow up into the Urshifu, though, knocking it out. The important thing there is, I guess, the Amoonguss is, now that the Amoonguss is gone, you kind of, or excuse me, it switched out with the Regenerator. It's still asleep, but you at least get some HP back, and with the Iron Crown not there, you can maybe take a turn or two of the Collision Course. Probably one, but...
Ooh, I wonder, I think what Krystyna might actually be trying to set up for here is this Kyogre and Tornadus pairing specifically, because if you spam Rain Dance every turn in a water move, you're guaranteeing that Rain is going to be up at the start of that turn. It's not like Seung has a Sunny Day user that's slower than Tornadus but faster than Kyogre. Like, if you're going for Rain Dance, you're ensuring Rain is going to be up. So what's going to happen here is it looks like Kyogre is going to come in. Because it's a Choice Scarf, first thing we're going to see is that Drizzle activating. Then we're going to see Drought, and then if Tornadus wants to, this could just be a Rain Dance next turn.
So the Weather Wars have begun from both these players here. We do see a potential option to lock in something like the Ice Beam and the Cryogon as well, kind of saying that Seung hasn't clicked Follow Me this game and really values those Psychic damage. So I could potentially see for something like Seung, the Psychic going into the Tornadus, considering there's no Terastallization anymore for it, no Terra Dark. Something like Seung going for just a Collision Course and a Psychic is probably fine here as well. What does Rain really do for you here? You're still resisted, considering you are a Dragon type. You kind of have to commit to the Ice Beam, and if you lock into that, okay, I can just follow me next turn.
I think with Ice Beam, we're gonna... I think Ice Beam is, like, maybe not efficient enough damage, because one thing that Seung's already doing really well this game, the Aditi is clicking Psychic a lot. That damage is adding up. Ice Beam doing, like, a decent chunk to Koraidon. The freeze, that is really going to change the story here.
I mean, that's why you set up Rain, I guess. I mean, the setting up Rain for that chance to get the freeze on the opposing Koraidon is absolutely huge. As indeed, he didn't even go for an attack, it went for Trick Room.
Yeah, Trick Room, you know, that totally makes sense when you're fighting, like, Krystyna does still have that Amoonguss in the back. Like, after a Generator, it's going to be a little bit above half. I think it's on something like 2 turns of sleep. So that Amoonguss is something of a time bomb. However, giving your Koraidon the advantage with Trick Room against Kyogre, I can definitely understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And not getting too greedy with the Psychic either makes a lot of sense, because now you can just go for it on this turn. And the Amoonguss would have to switch in on the Tornadus slot. The Psychic firing off. Let's see if Tornadus hangs on. It does not, unfortunately, and is going to go down. The Amoonguss is going to be Krystyna's last Pokemon here. Let's see.
Ooh, Flare Blitz melts the ice! Seung remembering that Flare Blitz is one of those few unique moves, and not all Fire-type moves can do this, but some of them can just, like, melt or freeze instantly if you try to click them well frozen. Koraidon going down to another Ice Beam for its trouble, so maybe not the absolute best trade in the world, but it's like, okay, decide between Collision Course and 4 in 5 chance of staying frozen, or Flare Blitz and do a little bit of chip damage. Flare Blitz doesn't sound so bad. So
yeah,
this is going to be a 2-on-2 of the Mushroom Pokemon and their friends. Both of them in relatively dire straits right now.
And considering the Amoonguss is asleep, it's really going to come down to sleep turns, what's going to be possible. This indeed, he has actually done, I think, the most damage besides the Iron Crown this game. The Psychics have done so much work for Seung here, not even using as a follow me bot, a lot of people assume it to be. Actually putting out Psychic and kind of saying, this is like a pseudo follow me. You have to respect me, otherwise I'm going to follow up on Pokemon like your Focus Sash Urshifu. I'm going to follow up on your Pokemon and get knockouts that you wouldn't normally expect me to. And then now I'm going to click Helping Hand and go for a Seed Bomb into the Kyogre potentially.
Okay, Amoonguss staying asleep. This Brupon is about to go sicko mode on this Kyogre. I don't like your odds, Kyogre. That's 1 Seed Bomb for the knockout. Oh my goodness.
And for Krystyna there, you're obviously hoping you get like the wake up there, and you could go for something like a Clear Smog into the Brute Bonnet and potentially get a knockout.
Remind
and then hope
me,
you live the...
Is Clear Smog neutral against Grass and Dark, or is it like...
It's super effective.
It's super.
Dark does not resist it, but I think at that HP anyways, you're able to knock out.
Ooh, the Rocky Helmet knocking out Brute Bonnet for trying to attack Amoonguss. Ooh, wait a second. That was a Sucker Punch connect, so this means Amoonguss is... Clear Smog onto a DD. Is it the attack you need? He's just going to keep clicking Psychic.
Yeah, I will say with no special defense boost and no Psychic Train, no, not enough. If you had maybe a little bit more HP on the Amoonguss, I think that was winnable. Like, if you have like a full HP Amoonguss in that scenario, you get rid of the special defense boost on the Indeedee, and you have something like Pollen Puff. There's maybe an end game you could argue there, but unfortunately, Krystyna does not have that, and we are going to see it drop there to the Psychic from Seung, and Seung is going to take the set 2-0.
What a fun set. I think Krystyna, like, played both of those games really interestingly. Like, in the first game, I think realizing, like, okay, I kind of needed to turn my Tornadus into a Dark type to do something about this expanding force. And then the second game, just getting all those calls right and kind of figuring out, like, I don't know. I think both players just went for a lot of moves that they weren't really telegraphing, or they were trying to telegraph something else. And then, like, oh, I caught you off guard. My Indeedee is the offensive threat of the game now. What a fun set. I don't think we had a chance to talk about those players' scores, but Seung was at 3-1 going into the round, so he's going to be 4-1, guaranteed spot in our top cut. Krystyna, unfortunately, was 2-2 going into that round, so with the score of 2-3, don't think she's going to have a chance to make it into the top cut, but perhaps with the challenge coming up, maybe we'll see her succeeding in that as well.
Yeah, and I think with a team like hers as well, it has the chance to succeed. A lot of people, just like they don't have answers for Sun, don't have answers for Rain either. And with Rain Dance and something like the Kyogre, that Urshifu looks like it could be a big problem. We saw it do a lot of damage in that game even. It just, unfortunately, not able to find its footing against the two Psychic types.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I don't know, two Psychic Weeks are not the Pokemon that you want to fight an Iron Crown with. That is always going to be a really tricky matchup. All right, guys, I think we are going to get ready for a break very soon. Soon we'll probably have top cut standings to post. Maybe if you keep an eye on Twitter, you'll find those there. And before very long, you and I will be back for a quarterfinals match with some of the first of our players qualified for that top 8.
I'm super excited, but like Jumpa said, we'll be right back after a quick break. Stay tuned, trainers. You don't want to go anywhere.